we owe them.
Okay, so no,
So
so I understand that because we haven't paid that yet. But what was allocated last year? Could you remind? Was it 250 or 225?
it was 225, and I think
220.
what you're getting at is how much of that is left.
Correct.
And so I'm just pulling that up now, and it looks like the amount left is 75,000.
Okay, so if there's 75,000 left, and it sounds like we have to pay 30 something thousand, um, if we're not expanding on this program, and it sounds like for the next foreseeable future, ridership is not going to be as big as it was during the end of 29, basically pre-COVID. Like you could see, like looking at this chart, like once March hit, everything went down and hasn't really picked up back to the same levels as it was before March. So we can expect that this is going to continue for the foreseeable future unless something changes come March, April, vaccine, whatever, whatever that might be. So knowing that those numbers more than likely will probably be somewhat consistent, and there's 75,000 still left, like basically there's probably going to be like at least 50,000 in balance. What happens to that 50,000? Does it stay into that account? Does it go back to the general fund?
Well, it just stays in that account in this particular case, but we appropriated it to this account for ridership, and it was in the expectation when we appropriated it in last year. I believe it was last year, September of 19 is when we got the funding, and it was expected to last 2 years. So it looks like it's not going to last the full 2 years, but we again, depending on the ridership, maybe it will. But I think at the when we received the actual information, the actual ridership so far, which is only 9 months, turned out to be 125,000. Now the remaining period of the it's roughly a 2-year contract. So the remaining period looks like it's because of COVID, we should be fine. But I think the ridership far exceeded what they expected.
I also, with all due respect, I also think that this is, I find it's a valuable program for the city to give, because we obviously saw that people really use it for many reasons, and many of the riderships have low income. And I also think that we should think into the future, right? I know COVID is here, but we don't know what the effects of COVID is going to be, and this is something to have. And I appreciate the fact that you're asking where the money is, but if we're keeping this money in the ridership and we keep it in that line item, it will help us to continue to fund this for the future.
No, thank you. No, and I understand that. I think, my, not necessarily an issue, but my questions go to when initially this was voted on. I remember that there were some concerns throughout the council. I remember voting for this. Partly what I was looking for was data, and also what I was looking for was essentially, if this was going to be approved, that data needed to be presented to us as far as ridership. And I appreciate that that was given to us, because I'll be honest, if I didn't see that in front of us, I wouldn't have been voting for this. But seeing that, I felt like my vote was voting on a program that would last over a period of a year. For even though that this, I'm hearing now that the contract was for 2 years. From the way it was presented, it sounded like the money, my understanding was that money was going to be enough for basically like a year and a couple of months or something like that. So I saw it as a year program. So if I'm looking at things and saying, all right, so we're putting X amount of money for the next fiscal year, that it sounds like, if more money is put into it, then we would just be extending the program for several months, which I guess is what is being asked of us today. So this 225,000 wouldn't be for the next fiscal year. It'd be for the next fiscal year and, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months or something like that.
Well, it is intended to go for another
that 75,000 is still going to stay in that account. It's not going to come back, and we're not going to be reducing this. So there's basically going to be a surplus. If things go the way that they're going, there'll be another surplus next year. So you might be looking at, if it was 75,000 now, potentially there'd be another 75,000 into that account.
Well, this in the cover letter, it does indicate that this 225,000 expects it to go for another 2 years. So, again, the initial program was supposed to be September 19 to September 21, or until funds are exhausted. So I don't think the transfer that was made last year is going to get us through, even with COVID, through September of 21, because it is a little bit more popular than I think we thought. So the purpose of this next 225,000 is to hopefully authorize it for 2 years from now. So it can continue to the residents. So that's, I think, the information. I think it was a little bit more, the initial request, and I wrote it in my notes for free cash transfer. Free cash transfer was made in May of, it was presented in May of 19 and passed, I think, in June or July. And the program started in September, where they started the free rides. And in the request, it was indicated that this was supposed to last. Nobody knew how many riders we were going to pay for, because we didn't know what the usage was going to be. So it was presented to the council that we hope this lasts 2 years, but the 225,000 will go for 2 years or until the funds are exhausted. It was a pilot program, I guess, because the program was such a success. The MVRTA and the mayor would like to propose it for additional 2 years to keep the program going. So
Martha, because
that's not to suggest that I don't think the program is going to go to September of 23, 2 years from the end of the last contract, because the initial 225 was not going to get us through September of 21, or it's not anticipated, even with COVID. If that helps answer. I mean, the idea of the program was to, give free busing into certain areas downtown for the residents. We didn't know what it was going to cost, how popular it was going to be. I think the ridership, when the residents had to pay for it, I don't think it was that they saw a substantial increase once it became free. And of course, it's only in the certain bus routes, as Martha explained. So it's been a pretty popular program, and it has really helped those that were intended, according to, as Martha's identifying for you.
My last question, why wasn't this built into, it seems like it's a very popular program. Pre-COVID, it seems like, a lot of people were using it. I've heard a lot of positive things when it first got started. Why wasn't it built into the budget?
I don't, in other words, if that's a policy decision, I'm not sure if the city wants to fund it as part of its operating budget annually and commit to an annual thing. This is where we're just taking it out of reserves and funding it on a test basis last year. And now we're looking at, since we have reserves, to go ahead and use it. But if we didn't have reserves, I'm not sure if there'd be something the mayor would be able to pay for. But that's a policy decision. If the next mayor wants to put it in the budget, that's something that's a policy decision to fit it in there.
All right, thank you. No further questions. Thank you so much, both of you, for your responses.
thank you.
Great. So I'll call the question. Roll call vote. Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Motion is sent up to full council. Favorable recommendation. The
Hey,
next,
Counselor, can I just interrupt for a second? There is one more police item. I'm not sure if the chief is still here, but it's 23820. It's on the back of the page, or on the second page of the agenda.
23820.
Mark,
Yes.
you're Mark. Mark LaPlante, Chair LaPlante. It's Maria.
Hi.
Hi. Who made the motion on that item, the previous one?
I believe it was Mr. Payano, seconded by Mr. Abdu.
No.
No? Then reverse it. I had a 50-50 chance of getting that right. So it was Mr. Abdu, seconded by Mr. Payano. Should we rewrite look at the minutes and see how that works? Mr. Abdu, are you okay with that?
I'd like to hear it. I'd like to hear it again, because I kind of rolled kind of quick.
Sure. So as I thought it was a motion by Mr. Payano, seconded by Mr. Abdu, but some of us here in this group here thought it was the other way around. Was it your, whose motion was it? Was it your motion, Mr. Payano?
No,
No.
there was no motion on that one.
This most recent one, I didn't make the motion, no.
No.
Who wants to make the motion on this
So,
one?
Mr.
Mr.
Chair, it sounds like you
Payano?
jumped the gun.
I'm very excited about the program. Mr. Payano, who wants to make the motion?
I was saying, we don't have a motion yet.
No, we
Go
don't.
ahead.
Okay.
I thought we had one.
No.
Is there a motion?
Sure. So moved.
Motion by Mr. Payano.
To send up to the council with a favorable or just to send up to the council?
Send it out to the council. No recommendation.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No recommendation. Is there a second?
Yes.
Motion made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion on the matter. Roll call vote at this point. Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. So this has gone up to the full council. My apologies, everyone. This is going to full council without a recommendation for the next meeting next Tuesday.
We've got Maria to keep us honest.
You're gonna be confused.
Very good. All right, the next item, moving slowly. 246. Oh, wait a second. Somebody said about a police department one.
Yeah.
What was that?
23820 is for police cameras. It's under, it's new business, but it's from November 17th. You haven't taken it up yet.
I don't think the chief is still with us. I know that Miss Brunel is with us. She's probably going to be around here for the next bit anyway, so we don't need to take that one out. So we're just going to keep
Okay.
going. So the chief is not with us. So moving on. The document 24620, a request to authorize the expenditure of OBW grant funds, $257,500, put on the agenda by Ms. Vilma Martinez, CD Director. Ms. Martinez, good evening.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you. So in February of 2020, the YWCA of Northeastern Mass applied for this Office of Violence Against Women FY20 Transitional Housing Assistance Grant for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. This was really a grant partnership between the city, Mass Higher, Merrimack Valley Career Center, and the YWCA. So the federal government made available $30 million, and grants were up, in sizes between $400,000 and $500,000 if you provided workforce development. Lawrence was notified of an award actually that exceeded that. We received, the city received $515,000. The YWCA was the applicant, the official applicant. So, and we split that grant evenly between the two organizations. This was a required partnership. Local government needed to partner with a victim service provider, a housing provider, and the YWCA does both. Since we included Workforce Center as a way to promote self-sufficiency among survivors, then we received the grant. So we're grateful to Congresswoman Trahan for this. The grants support transitional housing or short-term housing assistance, also related support services to victims and their children. And also these services could be provided between 6 months to 2 years. More specifically, there's case management, involved housing advocacy and counseling, job training, and other resources. So we're going to be working really closely with the YWCA. When I say we, I'm talking about our homelessness prevention and intervention team that works with us. And basically what we're trying to do is to create a robust safety net for survivors of domestic violence by supporting this transitional housing program. And as we can serve up to 6 families at any given time, and 3 of those units will sit within the YWCA FINA house for survivors and their children. And then the city of Lawrence will work with the YWCA and work with landlords to provide 3 units in the community satellite units. So why do we think about this? Well, this was a direct response to the high prevalence of domestic violence that we see. We know that it's getting yet worse in the face of COVID. We can see how many restraining orders are filed. That's a great indicator for us. But then also the other thing that we have seen from our end is that, first of all, we have a homelessness initiatives working group within the city, and many of the providers that were there talked about young youth and young adults, and many of them experiencing not only domestic violence but also human trafficking and sexual assault. Lashos House also has reported a lot of the clients seeking shelters that they see, they're actually survivors of domestic violence, so they have to turn them away or send them to a specialized shelter. We also conduct a point in time count every year around January, and can't recall the exact number, but it exceeded the 200. And out of those, about 20 individuals reported that they were homeless because of domestic violence or fleeing domestic violence. So we saw this as an opportunity for us to support the work that we do, almost pair up some of the ESG funds that we have to help support this effort, and also to support staff. So funds will go to support staff members, and also go to direct services to support victims as they get back on their feet. So they can receive not only rental assistance, but also utility assistance, among other things. So this is the first time the YWCA had applied, I guess, for this grant before and never received the funds. And this is the first time that we actually received a fund within the city. So I don't know if you have any additional questions that I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. Can you speak to how many units we currently have that help with the OVW problem in our city?
There really isn't any units. If you look at transitional housing could be like the YWCA that has a building with apartments and they have staff and they provide supportive services there. Or it could be done in satellite, in a satellite manner like we're trying to do. I don't believe there's anything else. Maybe Casa Nueva Vida provides some supportive services that are similar to that. But it could be that sometimes you're assisting homeless families, and upon further review and intake, you realize there's domestic violence present. So 1 in 3 women will be survivors of domestic violence. So the numbers you can imagine could be very high. So a lot of the people, even while we had the shelter open for COVID in Andover for the safe distancing, there were families that we had to take in because they had no place to go. Shelters were not accepting families. So there aren't many resources. I mean, not specifically like that for survivors of domestic violence.
What is the nearest community, I think my last question, that offers something like this?
That's basic. The YWCA offers, I believe, is 9 units of transitional housing for survivors. So that's 9. I believe Casa Nueva Vida may serve, I think they have about 5 satellite units, but I could verify that for you.
So that was my question. So we have maybe about 15 or so.
Maybe, yes.
Units in our city, and this is going to expand it by, was it 70? Is that what we said?
It's going to be 6 families, and we can provide services and housing assistance anywhere between 6 months to 2 years until they get back on their feet. This is why the workforce portion was important to us, because we want to make sure that we're supporting families as they become more self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we don't. I'll speak for myself to get more information about what's happening. So. And seconded by Mr. Abdu. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will now call the roll. Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr. Abdu.
Yes.
Chair votes in the Mr. Rodriguez noted. The chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you. That's a hard job to do, Ms. Martinez, to deal with that stuff. So I don't know how you do it. I did
it for 23 years before I came to the city. So
that's hard. Yeah. Thank you for your involvement and try to help out our residents. Document 24720, a request to authorize the expenditure of the lead hazard control and healthy home grant funds for $1.5 million. Again, Ms. Martinez.
Yes, first of all, there's a typo in that. It was not $1 million. It's
okay, good.
It's 5,004,920. Yes. So we're really excited about this because the city applied for this. There was about, the last grant we had was in 2016 through 2019, and it was only $2.9 million. So I'm really excited about this. We applied and successfully were awarded this lead-based paint hazard reduction grant and a Healthy Homes supplemental grant. 4,404,920 are for the lead hazard, and then $600,000 are for the Healthy Home. So we applied for the same amount that we received. So I'm excited about that, but we need to make sure that we correct that amount. What we're going to do with this fund is what we've been doing since 2004 when we received the first lead grant. So we're hoping to address lead hazards in about 220 housing units for low and very low income families in our city, with families with children, and provide innovative environmental workforce training to about 100 low income individuals as well. The Healthy Homes grant will provide basically an expansion, so we cannot use Healthy Homes funds separately from the lead-based paint hazard reduction grant. They have to be together. So it's almost like a complement to the work that we're going to be doing. And using basically a Healthy Homes rating system, we go into each home and we're hoping to address or remediate any health or safety issues for about 200 units of housing. The grant goes to support many of our staff salaries for many members of our staff, but also funding goes to direct payment assistance for the lead remediation, abatement, trainings, and other purchase services. What's really good about this grant is that we're also able to sort of leverage other sources of funding. So we're using some match funding also to support their housing rehab. We're looking at probably spending around $14,700 maximum per unit on rehab, and about $3,000 on average for Healthy Homes. We're also looking at adding some of our home funds and CDBG, for deferred loan and CDBG funds, and also matching those families who may be a little bit over income or who may be eligible for Get the Lead Out grant through Mass Housing. So investors that wish to also delet their homes, they'll need to, there's like a contribution, 25% contribution, just like we've done in the past. Even though the program it's really targeting citywide, there are 5 neighborhoods that were identified basically as having greater disparities related to lead when they analyze the census tract. So we're looking at the General Donovan, the Arlington, North Common, South Common, and Lower Tower Hill. As of our efforts, just we want to make sure that we are addressing quality of life issues for our residents, and makes you sort of look at made based on social determinants of health or socioeconomic factors that impact health, such as low income, poverty, low educational attainment, unemployment, language barriers, etc. So we're going to vamp up our outreach efforts and education efforts and awareness raising efforts. And we're going to be basically, the grant aligns nicely with our consolidated plan. And I was really happy to see that our consolidated plan for the next 5 years was just released, and to see language around health outcomes in public health and health inequities in it, it really is, it's exciting, at least for me, because I love health equity work. So it aligns really nicely with that. We're also looking to build capacity and sustainability with it by investing resources to train inspectional services staff on the lead determination and Healthy Homes assessments. We're always looking for ways to look at what we already have and better integrate the work that we're doing across departments. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And so just overall improve the health, public health of our city. And we're going to have pretty much similar partners that we had in the last 3.5 years. So we worked with Community Action Council. Some of them obviously are subject to procurement process, but we're really excited about this grant. And so looking forward to the next, doing some great things over the next 3.5 years. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. When you were listing all the different places, I did not hear South Lawrence East on there. So maybe there is an opportunity there.
No, it's citywide. It's just that extra efforts would go there because when we did the analysis and looking at census tract and looking at housing and the aging of housing, that's pretty much, when children under the age of 6, sort of those are the neighborhoods that pop up.
No, I understand, but part of my job as district counselor is to advocate for those in my area. So there's my advocation for the folks there. So is there a motion or comments by members of the committee?
Motion to send it to the full council with favor recommendation.
Second,
Motion made by Mr. Payano, seconded by Mr. Abdu. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr. Abdu,
yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Motion is sent up to the full council with a favorable recommendation. And Ms. Halloran, please make a note that the number should be $5.1 million on the, is that right?
No, that's incorrect. The number is 5,004,920. I think someone in my team was trying to round it up and round it up incorrectly.
Okay, I got it.
I will say this, Mr. Mingus, the paperwork for 247 does say 5.1 million on there.
No, I know, yes. There was a mistake. There was an error on both sides.
Oh, even in the back of this.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay. So what, if you wouldn't mind, to avoid the confusion, just send the corrected copies so we can make those changes for the full council when this thing gets set up and our packets will reflect the accurate numbers. Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
That doesn't change it. So we're all on board of that motion, right? Everybody? Yes, Mr. Payano? Yes? 5.4, okay.
5.4 and the excellent placement of the Led Zeppelin citation. Get the lead out.
Duly noted, Mr. Abdu. Oh, boy.
I'll be here all night.
Try the veal. 24820. Request the authorization to expend grant funds from oh boy, Mr. Let me see this. Can I take this one? EEOA for $400,000. Phase 2 renovations, Starro Park. What's the Miss Fink? Who's the awarding agency on this?
The Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
So no sub agencies, just the Secretariat.
It's DCS.
DCR.
Yeah.
There's
No,
DCS.
DCS.
What's DCS stand for?
Department of Conservation Services.
Oh.
They're very, very strict that they are not DCR. They were very particular about that in our grant training program yesterday.
All right. So this is $400,000. That's accurate.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
So you've got the floor.
Okay, good evening, councilors. The city, in partnership with Groundwork Lawrence, submitted an application to the state for a park grant for Phase 2 renovations to Starro Park. Our application was successful and we were awarded a $400,000 grant, which we will use in conjunction with CDBG funds. Phase 1 renovations are focusing on the flat 2-acre area of the park and includes updates to the path system and relocation of both the basketball court and the playground area. The bids recently came in and we're hoping to get under contract in the next several weeks. And hopefully if the weather holds out, we can at least begin some demolition work of the existing structures and really ramp up the renovations in the spring. Phase 2 renovations will be focused on the 4.5-acre steep and wooded area with the pathways and steps that navigate the 103-foot elevation change from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. The paths are asphalt and they lead to concrete steps at the bottom of the hill. The asphalt and concrete are failing, steel railings are broken with exposed sharp edges, and the paths do not meet accessibility code requirements. And even under these circumstances, usership of those paths remains high. Children are riding their bikes along the paths, young adults run the steps for cardiovascular exercise, and everyone uses them to move around the city. With this grant, we will be able to improve the safety and accessibility, as well as integrate the hillside with the park's flat upland with play and recreational opportunities down the hillside to Prospect Street. We plan to construct a sloped walkway using a series of switchbacks to manage the grade change. And these improvements are important because in our public meetings, the residents had concerns about illegal dumping and drug use in that area because it's really uninviting. There's a lot of overgrowth, which will be thinned out, so you can really be able to see the beauty of the view from the flat area during this renovation. So we will do design work during the current fiscal year, and construction can start as soon as July 1st of next year. And I'm pretty excited because this is the first time ever that I've been able to come before this committee with both the resolution that we have to vote on every year and an award all in the same vote. So the resolution usually has to be submitted by December, and we usually don't get our award notification until sometime in January, but we've already been awarded the grant. So tonight it's a dual purpose vote for the resolution, which is part of your package. And basically the resolution says that the city is allowed to apply for grants and accept the grants, and that we have the CDBG funds set aside for the work. And I'm also asking for authorization to expend the grant funds. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, that's amazing. Why do you think this is? I'm just curious.
Why they got the awards. I believe they received fewer applications this year. And they broke it down into two different grant programs. So they had a smaller grant program for a smaller community. So there was less competition, I think. So fewer applications to review.
All right, so I'll open up to the.
My job a lot easier, and yours as well.
I'll open up to the members of the committee for either a motion or or questions.
A motion to send this to the full council will favor recommendation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, noting that this is both a resolution and an authorization of expenditures. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Piano.
Yes.
Mr. Abdu.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. They send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you very much, Ms. Fink. Appreciate it.
Thank you, counselors.
Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Document 250. Nope, 249. This is an appropriation transfer of $500,000 from free cash to the DPW sidewalk special project account. It's a new account. It's put on the agenda by Mayor Dan Rivera. I'm guessing Mr. Payne is here to speak on that.
I am, Counselor.
Good evening, Mr. Pena.
Good evening. So this item is what is becoming now a routine request from the administration for the purposes of sidewalk repairs citywide. And the repairs are done based on need. I'll start with that. The one big change I would note this year as compared to prior years is that there is a slight decrease in the administration's ask. This year, we are asking for $500,000 as opposed to $750,000, which was asked in prior years. And I just want to make that note because this is in no way, this is in no way a reflection on a decreased need in the city. There's certainly a need, but rather this reflects the fact that we are, quite frankly, overwhelmed with the amount of work going on in the restoration area in the city. So the south side of the city is receiving quite a bit of attention currently. So we feel that an ask of $500,000 for this upcoming fiscal year is prudent, given the economic crisis that we're facing, but also balancing the needs here within the city. As I mentioned briefly, this is citywide. The list of sidewalk repairs are developed through a combination of site inspections conducted by our engineering team, as well as requests from the public. So anyone who lives, visits, travels, or has family living within the city of Lawrence can make a request to our DPW staff for much needed sidewalk repairs. Those are confirmed in person by our engineering team, and it's added to a list and then ranked by priority. And when I say ranked, we give special consideration for areas that are either adjacent to a school or on major thoroughfares that are highly transited by pedestrians on their way to and from schools, city buildings, hospitals, clinics, and the like. So really, I think this will be I think I want to say it's a 4th year requesting this, or 5th year requesting this. It's been well received by the community, and with that, we are requesting approval to send this to the full council. And with that, I'll open it to any questions, Councilor.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I guess it's a need. I don't think anybody's not going to vote for this. I think everybody's going to support it because it's just, we get hit. Give me an idea, if you don't mind. Give me a conceptual idea of how much money would it take to fix the needed sidewalks in the city? $1 million, 20 million, 50 million? How much money do you think? I'm trying to get a perspective as what is $500,000 as it deals with the entire city's needs? Can you help me understand that better?
That's a very good question. It's an interesting one, and I don't know that I could provide you just a flat answer on that as to how much it would take to replace it all, because we are dealing with constraints, and that is obviously the construction season. I think that within the resources that we have citywide, we could realistically accomplish, upwards of $1 million worth of repairs every year. The issue, as you can imagine, is that there's a life to all of these assets. So, even if we did appropriate, say, $10 million and spent the next 10 years repairing sidewalks, on the tail end, sidewalks that were replaced earlier on would be coming up for a replacement again. So I think that $1 million a year on average is a sustainable number in order to make some headway, so that we are repairing quicker than sidewalks are deteriorating in the city. And that's just based on, just experience with the program. I think that once we have, we've achieved, say 10 years of sustainable, of proactive repairs, that we could scale that back quite a bit. But I think I'd be hard pressed to just throw a number at it and say, here's what it would cost, at least off the top of my head. I can definitely dive into it.
It's important, Mr. Payne, only because as policymakers and decision makers, as we try to figure out what the best resources to allocate toward our problems, if we knew it, I think your part of your answer was, if you gave us $2 million, I'm not sure we could spend that $2 million because of our limited capacity. What I'm hearing is that we could probably spend up to $1 million worth of sidewalk repairs because of machinery and personnel, et cetera, contractors, and everybody's looking for contractors, and only so many of them that can do this work. So my understanding is you're telling me $1 million is probably the most at any one time that we can do. But who knows? There could be $10 million worth or $20 million worth of sidewalk, and that you don't have an answer to. I'm just trying to get a sense as to where we are. It was more for me to get an idea. So if you've got something later, I put you on the spot this evening with no bad intent, but if you can just come back to me just with an email or something and say, yeah, and talking to some folks, I think it's, if here's how bad the sidewalk problem is in our city. It's about $10 million or $20 million. That would be of some interest to me.
Yep, I could absolutely do that. The other thing I'll add is that what's been very successful in this program has been involvement from city councilors. Obviously, you all are the voice of your constituents. So with that in mind, certainly we want to keep those open communication, open dialogue going. Advocating for your constituents, because you know your constituents better than anyone else. So it's been very successful for us.
Of course, I will advocate, as I did before, for District F. E can take care of itself. F. I know we got some Columbia gas monies, but we got a lot of sidewalk issues as well. We're appreciative of the financing, et cetera, that's been there right now, but the need persists, and we do appreciate it. Any more questions, comments, motions?
Make a motion to send this up to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second, just discussion. I just have a question.
Motion made, seconded, discussion, Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Director Pena. Is it possible, I believe the last time that this was put forward, you presented to us with a it was like almost like a map. It was like, or but maybe it was a table, but it gave us a fair idea of what streets, what area you would be working on for certain months. Is it possible to get us just that updated information?
So I think, Counselor, you may be confusing this with the restoration project. For this particular project, we do not have a map. As I mentioned, this is routine repairs as requested by constituents really throughout the course of the year.
Would it be possible then to get us not a map, pager letting us
Yep.
know what streets you guys are going to be working on for the next couple of months? Or I'm sure that there's whoever's the project manager, probably is thinking like, hey, these streets are going to be in January. We'll do this in March, any type of document like that, just to give us an idea of where we're at. I think that I know that this is extremely important for a lot of people. And, I always get the question of, well, what streets are they fixing? And I might know a few offhand, but I don't know it all. So I think that data would be really useful for me, especially when this comes up, discussion with constituents. Thank you.
That I can definitely get you.
Okay, so now roll call. Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Piano,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Motion is sent up to the full council with a favorable recommendation. You're still with us, right, Mr. Payne? Because I think the next one here is 250-20 appropriation.
I am.
Appropriation transfer of $200,000 from free cash to DPW Clean Lawrence Special Project account. This is an existing account, so why don't you go ahead, Mr. Pena?
Councilors, likewise, this is becoming more of a routine request. The purpose of this funding is to recruit temporary employees throughout the summer months to provide added cleaning and vegetation maintenance within our city streets and sidewalks. They are fondly known as the Clean Lawrence crew. You've probably seen them throughout the city. They typically wear the yellow T-shirts and work with hand in hand with our DPW team to sort of augment the workforce when during spring, summer, and early fall months there's higher need for street cleaning, street and sidewalk cleaning especially.
Okay, and before I forget, Miss Halloran, I'm just noting on our agenda, number 24920 says it's a new account. According to Mr. Payne, we've been funding the sidewalk account for years. Can you just make a note on the sidewalk account that it shouldn't say new? And I'm going to move on right now to either motions or comments on this item, which is
That is a new account, Council. I'm sorry. We have not been funding this for many years. It's been funded out of the capital improvement project, but not free cash. So that it will be a new account.
Sorry about the misunderstanding, Ms. Halloran. We're going to leave that on there as is. Thank you, Mr. Rhinello. So back to 250. Any motions or comments? Motions?
Make a motion to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made, second. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
Mr. Piano?
Yes.
Rodriguez, noted. Chair votes in the affirmative. The next document is 25120, appropriation transfer of $500,000 from free cash to the DPW problem tree mitigation special project account. Mr. Pena.
Councilors, this last item is also one that I'm sure that you are aware of. It's also becoming a routine request that we've noticed certainly over the last few years. There's been an increase in needs from residents related to large public shade trees that are causing are having negative effects on people's private properties and certainly cities' infrastructure. Trees that unfortunately were the wrong species were chosen for sidewalks. They've caused sidewalks to buckle. They've certainly encroached on sewer mains within the city, sewer services and the like. And the purpose of this funding is for the city to undertake routine maintenance, care, and in some cases, removal of trees and replacement with better suited species of trees. The request this year is for $500,000, which is what we have been really averaging on an annual basis as far as our tree contracting. I'll also note that while certainly some sections of the city have a higher density of trees, we have received and responded to requests citywide. As I alluded to, in addition to the tree removal, there's a component that is dedicated to tree replanting. We believe that public shade trees provide a value to the city, by ways of providing shade and relief from, hot scorching sun. It certainly helps reduce air conditioning costs of residents who live near public shade trees. Not to mention, we have undertaken vast replanting within the city's parks. Recently, through a partnership with Groundwork Lawrence, we planted trees along Market Street between Parker and South Union. Groundwork Lawrence has planted hundreds of trees in the last couple of years through a series of grants that they've received. And Groundwork Lawrence is currently under contract with the city for replanting within the gas impacted zones, so that as we remove trees in those areas to make way for sidewalk and ADA compliance, sidewalk replacement and ADA compliance, that we can replant trees along those streets, and again with the focus on more suitable species. So this funding will allow us to continue in this effort.
Any, Mr. Pena?
Yes.
This is a huge issue. We're in District F, as you already know. Greenfield Street being the poster child of the almost ground zero of the tree issue, I think, in our city. Although I do know there's other parts that have issues as well. So it's not easy. It's hard, and this is a tremendously challenging issue to try to figure out: should we cut down a tree? Should we keep a tree up? Is it alive? Is it dead? Is it causing problems for ADA, et cetera, or homeowner problems, et cetera? So it becomes a challenging issue. So I think the work we get, I know that I've got a lot of work to do with you and Groundworks Lawrence, your contractor, on this. We're not there yet, but this is money set aside for help. Question that I have that you may not have an answer to, I'm hearing I'm hearing more and more of legacy trees. Do we have any legacy trees in the city as it's defined by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
That is a good question. I'm not prepared to offer an answer because I simply just do not know at this time.
Because I'm hearing arguments that we're taking down legacy trees, and I just want to make sure that that we are aware of what we're taking down. So let's have a further. We need to have a conversation anyway, and we will have that offline, and perhaps even in a public setting about things that are in my district. So I thank you, and maybe we can find out what that means a little bit more. Any motions or comments by members of the committee?
Comments?
I see Mr. Payano and then Mr. Abdu. Comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sort of in line with your previous comment, Mr. Chair. The question I have for Director Pena is, well, it's not even a question. I just have a concern. I think we know DPW has been doing a great job in identifying trees that are dead, trees that are affecting homeowners. I think so far it's been a great project, but I think the piece that we definitely need to work on more is identifying areas where we can plant more trees in the areas that these trees are coming down. So there have been a lot of concerns from residents that I've received, more in residents from sort of like South Lawrence than North, but individuals that are upset that we are cutting trees down, but not replacing them. And there is, there is a science to it where we see that in areas that, well, I mean, in other cities, in areas where they've cut down trees, that those areas get a whole lot warmer. So I think it's not just a, that these individuals are thinking about that their neighborhood might not look as nice with that tree there. I think that it goes more to it. It's that that area is going to become harder now that that tree is not there to give shade. Now, I understand that in a lot of instances where we're cutting trees down, maybe all instances, these trees need to be cut down. But I think that we need to take that into account. And as much as we are working on removing troubled trees, we should be working with the same effort in replacing them, knowing that it'll be years before those trees can offer the same level of shade that these previous trees that have been there for 100 years, if not more, have been doing to those neighborhoods. So that's just my only comment. I know that it's been difficult, especially if DPW is not necessarily putting funding over a project like that, but I love to see something in the future that is dedicated to that. And I just want to address that point because for the last, during the COVID time, like the springtime, there were a lot of residents that were calling me regarding that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that. And if I could just respond just quickly, I wholly agree with you. And it is our intention to replace all of the trees that are removed with a suitable species of tree. The only comment I'll make on that is that perhaps we don't move as fast enough as people would like because, as I mentioned, a lot of the tree removal takes place just prior to sidewalk replacement. So it's essentially 3 steps, remove the tree, replace the sidewalk, and then replant trees. And unfortunately, when the tree gets removed, there's a period of time that passes before a new tree gets put in. And what happens in the interim is that we have that heavy construction. Unfortunately, we can't replace a tree immediately because it would be damaged. But yes, I absolutely agree that, more trees are beneficial for the city.
Mr. Abdu?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The benefit I get as a member is hearing others speak. And if I could, I have a question for you, Mr. Chairman. What is a legacy tree? Because you piqued my interest with that. What is a legacy tree?
As I understand it, and there are people who are far more informed, it is a tree that has a special designation, either because it's a special kind of tree, it has some sort of historical significance associated to it. It's a unique tree in the area, maybe a tree that's kind of rare, or a tree that may be very, very old. And so there's a lot of different things, and that's my understanding of a legacy tree. But to answer your question more fully, is that's a phrase that's now being used an awful lot for trees that I don't think are legacy trees, and we're just kind of throwing that around as a boilerplate language. It's kind of lazy language is what I call it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And, to Mr. Payano's point, I think it is important that we maintain a balance of taking trees down while replacing them, if not 1 for 1, maybe even more. However, doing so in a thoughtful way and not putting them back where they're coming down. And I want to compliment Mr. Pena, Brian Pena, and the DPW and the arborists they work with, because oftentimes, hard decisions are made as they're putting the sidewalks and streets in to remove trees. And, South Bowden, Lennox, and others have been recent examples where, many an older tree has been taken down. And what I'm pleased or confident about is that we've partnered, or in this case, we've contracted Groundwork Lawrence, but I do know that they have an additional program where they get grant money and convert that into trees that they offer citizens each year for a certain period of time. So I do want to commend Mr. Pena and the DPW for the work they've done. It's been noticeable. Obviously, there has been a lot of Columbia gas related work in South Lawrence, particularly in District D, that I know has, activated a lot of this tree work. And I would continue, I think, along the spirit of what Mr. Payano so well articulated, that we continue to plant trees and that we do so in a thoughtful manner, away from new sidewalks or old sidewalks and away from the streets, so that we can enjoy both the benefits and the oxygen of the trees, but also the accessibility and reliability and resiliency of some sidewalks. So I look forward to supporting this. Thank you.
All right, so
Motion to send this to the full council with favor recommendation.
Second.
motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, duly noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. The motion is moved up to the full council. Favorable recommendation. Let's see here. The next one is document 25520, appropriation transfer of $250,000 from free cash to demolition of dangerous buildings. A special account put on by Mayor Dan Rivera.
Good evening, councilors. Mike Amano, Director of Inspectional Services, to speak on this item.
Welcome, Director.
Thank you. The intention of this item is to basically establish a revolving account that would be funded by the $250,000. And that would be used to facilitate the demolition of unsafe or dangerous buildings in the city. For the most part, code enforcement, the goal is to preserve property, but sometimes from time to time, it's important that we remove some dangerous properties. And this itself can be a critical component to saving other properties like neighboring properties, or eliminating blight and things that have been proven to be an impediment to the community, as well as sometimes even preserving life. We found that some properties in this, when they're vacant and abandoned, they become an attractive nuisance to the community. So we have people who are looking to shelter in these properties. We saw not too long ago on Summer Street that a homeless couple had set fire to a building, and it ended up destroying about 5 buildings. We've seen that children have explored some of these properties, the vacant properties. Most recently on Brookfield Street, I think after the Columbia gas incident, we had a vacant property that was half burnt, and we saw that there was a case of arson where some children had gone in and set fire to this property again. In addition, we've seen things outside of this community where a large vacant mill building in Haverhill burnt down due to some children exploring that property. Obviously, in the city, we see a lot of illegal dumping. And when we have vacant properties that just look bad in a community, in a neighborhood, people see that as an opportunity to dump, whether it be trash or boxes, whatever the case may be, on that property and make it worse, creating even more blight. There's lots of different reasons that properties need to be torn down. Sometimes they're, again, fire damaged and they're just sitting and waiting for insurance proceeds to come through. They might be falling down and they might be a risk to collapse. And again, all of these same people who would break into a property have that ability to be trapped in a dangerous situation, causing death even. And we see the same risk to our first responders who have to go into these properties and either try to extinguish a fire or see what's going on inside of the property. In addition to all that, sometimes we have abandoned properties that are just left. It might be an old estate that nobody has a claim to it, or they don't pay taxes and they're left in the community. And we see properties rotting out and roofs collapsing. We see infestation of rodents and rats and squirrels. All of these things are hazardous conditions that the city has the authority to eliminate by raising a property. But the problem, of course, is funds are not always available. So again, the purpose of this account would be to fund the elimination of these hazardous conditions, put a lien on the property to recover those funds, and replenish the account so that we would have the tools to do this again if we had to. And, it's essentially getting rid of these buildings is getting rid of fire hazards. It's getting rid of crime in some senses, and ultimately getting rid of what's turned out to be a drain on city resources. And for the most part, code enforcement, sometimes we see as a preventative measures. We see it in inspectional services. We see it in fire prevention. And when in the world of prevention, you don't always see the good that comes out of it because you're preventing things from happening. But with a code enforcement program where we can be aggressive when properties are left to essentially die, that's something that brings, really it brings a vibe into a community, or brings life back into a community that is really in a place where they keep seeing something to bring them down, that old property, the trash, the dumping, that type of thing. With all that being said, I'll leave it open to you, councils. If you have any questions about anything that I discussed, I'd be happy to answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Romani. I'm having flashbacks to about the year 2000 when I was last on the council. And what we used to do back in the day was we went through so many demolition orders. It was equivalent to the number of votes we would be taking today on stop signs in the city. They were relatively frequent. And so when we're talking now, my radar, I think we've evolved somewhat since then. Maybe there's special reasons back 20 years ago with maybe the number of arsons that were taking place in the city and abandoned buildings. Something we're not seeing as many arsons, but abandoned buildings apparently, according to your testimony, still is prevalent. So I guess I just want to do two things. A, just to make sure that this is a big tool, right? This thing, and money being put to it is a pretty big hammer. Just want to be cautious as we wield that hammer. Number one. Number two, I just want to make sure the rules are still in place. If there is going to be a demolition, at least it was 20 years ago, and I haven't had many of these since then, those votes came before the council to authorize essentially the expenditures of funds or the authorization to go ahead and actually conduct the demolition. Is it your understanding that's still in play today? And is that your intention?
I don't know what the rules are as far as the expenditure of funds from council. Maybe Mark has a history on that. But what the intention with this would be for emergency demolition. So, most recently, if there's I can think of, in fact, a time that we didn't need it, but we had the ability to go to a fire property. It was up off of Haverhill Street where the property was collapsing. There was a chimney that was going to collapse. And the mere threat of the city stepping in to demolish the property was enough to get the insurance adjuster to move quickly and demolish the property on their own. In other circumstances, we have buildings that are nuisance buildings. So under the Board of Health regulations, specifically the sanitary code and Mass General laws, the Board of Health has the ability through inspectional services to condemn a building. And if it's not fixed or rehabbed, or it has no ability or any value to it, after 1 year, the Board of Health can take that property down itself. Obviously, all of these things are subject to appeals. There's an appeals process through the Board of Health. The same power is given to building inspectors under Chapter 143. Same thing with that. There's an appeal process for that. So there's a process in place to sort of look over the court enforcement official's decision and give people their due process when we make these decisions. From my experience, what I've seen is there's often not someone who's willing to even step forward and appeal because they don't really care too much about the property for whatever reason. Again, it could be just abandoned and they have no interest in it. And those, of course, are the most dangerous properties.
Now, my last point is please look into that. And maybe back in the day, there were upside down mortgages as well that may have played a part and a role in this, and people just walked away, wasn't worth it. And they just say, I don't need this property. Go ahead and take it and take my burden away. So, but before the next council meeting, if you could just kind of sharpen the pencil a little bit and learn a little bit more about the process, that would be helpful before I would support something like this. It'd be useful so that I know that we all know what's the expectations, besides just saying there's a threat here, that there actually is not only is a threat, but here's how we get to follow through on that threat. So I would appreciate that in time for the next meeting. Can you do that for us, or for me anyway?
Yeah, sure. I'll look a little bit into it. I'm not too knowledgeable about how it was done with the city council in the past, but I could certainly give you a more detailed explanation of how it's done now through the Board of Health and building inspectors.
Got it. All right, I'm going to open it up to either motions or comments.
Motion to send this to the full council will favor recommendation.
Is the mute button? I will second that.
Motion has been made and it has been seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Piano.
Yes, I'm sorry, mute button.
Rookie mistake, Mr. Pound. It's okay. Mr. Abdu.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, duly noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. It is sent out to the full council with a favorable recommendation. I'm not even going to put in a condition on there or ask for it. We can just make that little thing that we talked about. Mr. Armano work that between us. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, councilors.
Sure, no worries. If there's no objections, this one of our department heads has got a commitment that he needs to deal with, and if there's no objection, I'd like to take document number 260, 220 out of order to allow Mr. Soto an opportunity to give a brief resolution. Is there any objection? Well, hearing no objection, Mr. Soto, number 26220 is an appropriation transfer of 171,000 from free cash to other purchase services on Pine Apartment on Marston Street and East Street Design. That's the title. So you have the floor. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Constable Plant. Appreciate it. If I can share my screen, let me see if I have that.
Do you have that ability?
I have that ability, but I think I'm gonna have to fix something. It'd be okay if you go to the next item and come back to me so I can just work on this technical glitch here.
Sure.
That'd be
That's not a problem. We'll sit back. There you go, Mr. Soto. Try it now.
okay. Let me see. No, that doesn't seem to be working. The file's not popping up in the share screen.
Okay.
Yeah, let me figure this out. Sorry,
Okay.
sorry about that.
All right. So you want us to move on, and I don't have a problem doing that, and if, I don't think there'll be any objections by members of the committee. So we will move on, and we'll come back to you after this next item.
Okay,
Document
thank
number 250, document number 25620. This is an acceptance of grant funds of up to $39,700. This is assistance grant put on the city council agenda by our former city councilor, Eileen Brunell, director of support services and current clerk to the council. The roles there, councilor. Go ahead.
All these hats. Thank you, Council Vice President. The Lawrence Police Department was invited to apply for and was awarded $39,718 through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. It's a pass-through grant of federal funds that we get from the Department of Justice, and it's for items that has to be spent on criminal justice related equipment. So that is what we plan on doing, and we're looking for your authorization to spend those funds once they're accepted.
Any questions or comments or motions by members of the committee?
Make a motion to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Motion made.
Second.
And second, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Motion is sent up to the full council with favorable recommendation. All right, Mr. Soto, are you closer or should we go for one more? Let's go for one more. Document number 25720, acceptance of grant funds of up to $224,000 under the 2021 Charles E. Stanton Jr. Community Safety Initiative, putting it on the council agenda by Council Brunell. Right, Ms. Brunell?
This, I'm not sure if you're reading a different document, but mine is the Charles E. Shannon Jr.
What did I say?
It's Stanton.
What did I say?
Stanton, which is the foundation that sponsors the dogs. So we do have a Stanton grant, but this is the Shannon grant.
Okay.
And this is a grant that is targets at-risk and proven risk youth. And through this grant, the city partners with 7 different agencies locally, the YMCA, the YWCA, Family Services, and the Lawrence Methuen Community Coalition. ACT, which is Arlington Community Trabajando, TCP, which is Change the Play, the Boys and Girls Club, and Lawrence Family Development. And with those 7 partners, we have numerous programs throughout the city that target these proven risk and at-risk youth. And also, the department also run programs directly. We run our open gyms in conjunction with the Shannon Grant, and we also have a junior police academy most summers. We didn't have it this summer due to COVID. And it also sponsors some of our involvement in the school department as far as some of the Operation Nightlight, which is working with probation to check on students that have a curfew to make sure that they actually are honoring that curfew. So this money sponsors all of those agencies, and the funds come to us through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security as part of the Shannon Grant.
Okay. Any questions or motions?
To make a motion to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Rodriguez, noted. And the chair votes in the affirmative. The motion is sent up to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you. We're going to come back to you, Ms. Burnell. I think Mr.
I'll be
Soto is now ready. So Mr. Soto, number 262, agenda item. Did you want to take that over now?
Yes, thank you so much, Counselor. All right, let me share my screen. So what I'd like to do tonight is give a quick overview of a project that we're working on Marston Street in East Haverhill intersection. Have in front of you here a design schematic, concept plan 2, what the city is going with. The project cost is about $1.75 million. And the request before you tonight is $171,000, which is a little bit under 10% of the overall budget. So we're able to leverage over $1.6 million to make this project work. For any of you that know this intersection, it's a pretty tricky one. There's a pretty steep grade change coming down East Haverhill. So it's really difficult. There's a lot of accidents in the area. I don't have the crash data there, but I've heard from residents that it's a tricky intersection to navigate. What I'd like to do is give you a quick update of where this project stands and then take any questions you may have. So this project was approved at the September 2020 PRC meeting, and we're going to be seeking funding in the 2021 TIP for 1.7 million, and that's going to be happening in January. On the project needs, it's going to improve the safety, operation, and accessibility for all the users at the intersection of Marston and East Haverhill Street, which is a gateway to Lawrence from Methuen, improve safety, accessibility, efficiency of access for students and others to the Partham Elementary and middle schools, improve sight lines and visibility to pedestrians at the intersection of Marston and East Haverhill Street, improve access to the adjunct or adjacent Tamburello Brownfield site. As you know, we're working to this site right here. There's 2 parcels over at the Tamburello site. We're working to remediate that, those 2 parcels. And this will also create a nice entrance to the site, which will improve the marketability of the site when we get there. So we're thinking ahead there. The project limits is approximately 600 feet on Marston Street from the Partham School rear access to Josephine Ave, and approximately 400 feet on East Haverhill Street from the Partham School entrance opposite Young Ave to Marston Street. And some of the key features of the project include shared use path on the west side of Marston Street from the Partham School, the rear access to Josephine Ave, shared use path on the south side of the East Haverhill Street from Marston Street to Partham School, new reconstruction sidewalks and curb ramps on the east side of Marston Street and the north side of the East Haverhill Street through the project limits, and a slight realignment of East Haverhill Street and approach to Marston Street to improve sight lines and to reduce the turning speeds. and access management. I'm sorry. We do think that there's going to be a new traffic signal as well. If it's warranted, we still have to do an assessment on that piece to tie in with the kind of the timing of the other signals in the area. And obviously there will be roadway resurfacing. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more here. And like I said, the estimated cost is 1.75. And again, the request tonight is 171,000, which represents a little bit under 10%. And like I mentioned, yeah, it's a pretty good amount that we're going to be leveraging. So if you have any questions, I can answer those now.
Any questions or comments, motions by members of the committee? Mr. Abdu?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Soto, currently there's a flashing yellow light at this intersection, correct?
I'm actually not sure if it's flashing yellow or if it's timed, if it's flashing yellow all the time, or if it's only during school, kind of opens and closes. I can check in on that.
It is, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously not my district. That's not obvious. It's not my district. I make that a statement. What is obvious for those of us that have traversed the city all our lives is that that is a dangerous intersection. And with respect to the specifics, I would defer to the district counselor when we go to the full council, but definitely appreciate the effort being done here on behalf of those that use East Haverhill and Marston. It is a gateway. It is a gateway to our city, and hopefully one day a reuse of the brownfield that was formerly known as the Tom Burrell site. So I look forward to the development of this plan. Thank you.
Any other comments? And there's no motion yet, but is there any more comments or a motion?
Motion is sent with the full council. Favor recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Payano, second by Mr. Abdu. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Abdu. Mr. Rodriguez noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you
Great,
very
thank
much.
you, Councilors.
You're welcome. Next document backup is document 258, the acceptance of grant funds of up to $995,000 under the 2021 Massachusetts Municipal Public Safety Staffing Grant, put on the agenda by Ms. Eileen Brunel. Councilor Brunel.
Thank you, Councilor. The staffing grant has been available to selected municipalities for the last 10 years, kind of in response to that 2008, 2009 crisis where we had major layoffs, as did many other gateway communities, specifically in our public safety departments. This year we were invited, they invite you to apply for a specific amount, and we were invited to apply for $995,000. That is money that we use to send our recruits to the academy and the small salary academy, as well as their equipment. We use some of that money towards overtime. So it's a really great resource for the department to be able to have, but it's one of the ways that we're able to bring on new officers, train them, and do that in a very economical way outside of the general fund.
Any questions or comments by members of the committee? Hearing none, I'll call the question. First of all, is there a motion?
A motion is sent to the full council with favor recommendation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you very much, Councilor Bernal. I think you've got another one coming up here, right?
Yep. The next, I think 3.
Let me just tee that up here. Hold on for 1 second. This is document 259, acceptance of grant funds of up to $200
your committee all an email this evening, just making a note. There's actually an error in this document in the next one. The PSAP 911 Support and Incentive Grant is a reimbursement grant, and they cap what you can apply for. Last year, we could apply for the 294, and this year it is $360,967. I did put that in writing to all of you, and I sent you the document so that you could see it, but I apologize, it is incorrect on this. So my hope is that you could amend it at this level. But the PSAP 911 Support and Incentive Grant allows us to do two things. One is it allows us to buy equipment for our dispatch room. Usually we use it on very high-tech software and hardware that we need to run the call center. And then we can also use it for the salaries of call takers, but you can only use it for a very limited window. The grant usually gets awarded sometime in January, so we'll get those funds in January if you allow us tonight to accept them. And then we can use it through June 30th. So it doesn't pay for the whole year. And then we have to actually reimburse for those monies. But the bulk of the money is to pay for equipment, hardware, and software in the dispatch center, which is very much needed. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
What's the number again that should be there?
The number that should be there is $360,967.
Okay, and this is for document number
59.
220, and we still have something for 260, correct?
Right.
It'll still be okay, so we're gonna deal with this. All right, so Ms. Halloran, I know that we've received some stuff. Ms. Burnell, did you send that just to the committee members or to
I
all?
sent it to Teresa also, but I didn't send it to Ms. Halloran. I can do that.
I just want to make sure that's captured in our full council package.
I can communicate with your clerk. Just
Okay.
joke.
I'll get that, yeah.
I will put Teresa what you got on her email.
Repeat that again, Ms. Halloran.
I will check with Teresa tomorrow.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very good. All right. I don't have any questions. Was there a motion or questions?
Motion to send it to the full council with favorable recommendation with the included changes.
Motion made with the new numbers and second by Mr. Abdu. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Roll call. How about that? Mr. Payano?
Yes.
Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
Chair, Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. All right,
Thank
we're
you,
almost,
Council.
we're almost done, Councilor Brunel. 26020, is that number correct? 195,000? That should be a different number.
It's also incorrect. I apologize, councilors.
What is the number? And I'm going to read it in.
199, 133.67.
Great. So this document at 26020 is acceptance of grant funds of up to $199,133.67 under the PSAP 911 training grant. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor LaPlante. So basically, similar to the support incentive grant, it's very specific earmarked grants that we can get reimbursed for. And this allows us to get reimbursed for the tuition to send 130 officers to training. They get 16 hours of training to maintain their certification. And they also pays for their overtime while they're at that training. So it's a two-part grant that allows us to pay the tuition and then pay the officers to be at the classes. And that's it.
Okay. Any questions, motions?
Motion.
Good.
No, go ahead, sir.
Motion to send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
I will second that.
Motion made by Mr. Abdu, seconded by Mr. Payano. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Abdu.
Yes.
Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, noted, and chair votes in the affirmative. So thank you. I think we already dealt with document 261, which is the safety one, and then moving on.
When did that?
261.
Pardon me?
No, 261.
Yeah, we dealt with that. 261 was the very first thing we did. Was it the first
No.
thing no? Okay. Oh, it was 263 was our first one. My apologies. So let's go to 26120. The acceptance of grant funds of up to $39,573 under the Municipal Road Safety Program. Council Brunel.
So this is federal highways money that comes to us through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. They run every year a municipal road safety grant. Basically, it allows you to have overtime for officers to work on road safety programs, which might be a click it or ticket or that kind of a incentive program. It also allows you to buy equipment related to road safety. Sometimes it's been like speed boards that you might see in your neighborhood. And this year they're really into data analysis. So they're giving us $2,000 to put towards the data analysis program. So to try to, as we pull in all those information, with regard to roadway incidents, just so we can kind of see if there's trends. So they give us a total of the $39,573. And again, it's a reimbursement grant. We only get reimbursed for what we actually spend and can justify towards the grant itself. And again, that comes through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, and it's monies that they get from the National Highway Program.
I actually have a question on this one.
Sure.
Oftentimes we get questions regarding stop signs and yield signs, and people say, "Oh, there's an accident waiting to happen," or "We have 1 million accidents take place in this intersection." And I don't know if that's true, that we get a lot or a little. It's hard sometimes to know exactly. With this grant and this money that is going to be invested in it, if I had a question like how many accidents took place here, or is this a place that is a good place for there to be some sort of cautionary signs or something because of vehicular conditions or traffic? Would this be helpful at all?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that this grant asks us to do is to identify the worst accident areas, places that have had the highest propensity of accidents. One is that Five Corners in your district. Not right there, but right near there, there's some high accident areas. So it actually asked us then to do targeted operation near those, like that might, sometimes just having a cruiser parked has been proven to help slow down traffic, which helps prevent accidents. So it's not a program that has like a set requirement, you know what I mean? Like it's not, can't think of the word. But yes, some of this does help do exactly what you're talking about, identify intersections that have higher propensity for accidents.
And my last question on this is, when I get that question from a constituent, it says, "I need a stop sign or something here. When can I expect to get that this is going to be money spent and that we're going to get the data and that the police department is going to be able to spit out a response to a question on an intersection?"
If you want me to chime in, I can. Sorry, it's the chief.
Hey, Chief, welcome. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So, council, we can get statistics on any location, and we do that to former Councilor Burnell's point. We do go back and look at the top 10 accident locations for 2019, and we targeted those in 2020. Some of that with this grant, but any constituent that has an issue with this particular intersection or location, we can pull up the statistics and see if that merits more enforcement on our end. And if it does, then something like that would be used under something like this grant. It also would be potentially information that we give to DPW to you or to the council in that area to possibly put in a stop sign or some other traffic enforcement device.
Okay, so it's a little more beef on what we're currently able to provide. Is that what I'm understanding? More detail?
Yeah, for the most part, we can get a lot more data through our crime analysis and also more enforcement without paying for it through city funds.
Well, that's good news. All right, I'm going to stop there with the questions. Is there any other members who have questions or comments or motions?
Motion sends to the full council with favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Mr. Piano?
Yes.
Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez? Noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. So thank you. We're going right along here. We've already now just Ms. Halloran, I know you're watching me, so I'm make sure I don't make any mistakes. So 262, we have done that one. That's Morrison Street. 263, we have done that one. That was the building. And now we're going to new business. And is 237, the South Common Park, is that up, or are we going right to 238? The cameras.
We'd
I-
like you to go to 238.
I think we're going to 238, unless, I mean, I see Miss Martinez here. I'm just going in order. Was there anything you had on 237? Or are we going to right to 238? Does that make sense? We may have already dealt with 237. I don't remember.
Well, Mr. Chair, since we have them in front of us, can we
Yeah.
just do
237 has not been acted on yet.
That's
We
the
haven't
question.
taken that up yet. That is the next one on the agenda.
Thank you. So that's my question. All right, so let's take up 237. This is an appropriation transfer of free cash to special infrastructure account for, somebody put South Common and didn't put O'Connell, for O'Connell Park for $415,000.
That was not me, Councilor LaPlante.
Please know your audience. All
I
right.
learned my lesson the last time I went before. All kidding aside, hello everyone again.
Yeah.
So we are requesting a total of $415,000 to support a couple of our park projects. Park projects are becoming quite costly. Part of it, $180,000, is really to cover a shortfall for the O'Connell. And specifically that it's going to support a playground equipment installation, which we're calling phase 3. And that's the All Abilities Playground that we've been talking about. Additionally, there are some 2 basketball hoops that we want to add to the multi-sport court, to the outside of the multi-sport court, to extend use of that particular multi-sport of that court. And that comes up to about $763. The shortfall, we have some funding. We have some CDBG funds, and we still have CIP funds, a little bit left over from the FY19. And then the FY20, we do have that amount from last year. The issue became that we were counting on a donation from the New Balance Foundation. There was some conversations already happening before COVID hit. And they communicated that they were no longer able to support us because they had to redirect their funding to COVID-19 response, to the emergency response. So with that in mind, and considering how far along we are in the process of finalizing the construction in this park, I think that we're looking now for additional support. And that's for the O'Connell. And then for Storrow, when we first submitted this request, the estimated renovation cost was $1,405,000. We did have some park grant. We had some CDBG grants that we're allocating to it, and some CIP park improvements from last year. Still, there's a shortfall that we need to cover. We're blessed that we did receive 2 park grants for this park, totaling $800,000. But you compare that to the $1.4 million, and then actually we just put out the project, put it out to bid, and the lowest bid came way higher than that, $1,446,000. So really doing the park work is becoming, I mean, it's great. This park hasn't been touched in close to 20 years. It needs a lot of love. I know that Sue spoke earlier about some of the proposed renovations for this park, but we really need the support to cover the shortfall. So those are the 2 parks for which we're requesting free cash appropriations to be transferred to the special infrastructure account.
Well, I'm delighted. Thank you. I'm delighted to see that we're coming to a conclusion for O'Connell. It's been a while coming, but it's been worth the wait. And of course, everybody's antsy to see it finish, as you can imagine. But I'm really happy that that we're finally getting this done. And I'm going to be parochial here, if you don't mind. When can we expect, if approved, when can we expect the money to be spent and project completed? And when can we put the bow on this thing at O'Connell Park? This is the last phase, right? This is it, right?
This is it. This is for the playground. We received one design, I believe, prior to the most recent one, and it wasn't to our satisfaction. And so we just had it, have a brand new design that we still need to discuss with the mayor. But I'm hoping, I think that for a lot of the work, and Sue, it's more working more closely with our groundwork Lawrence partner, so she can speak about it. But I believe that's very little, few items left. There were some punch items on the list, and I think they have been addressed. So Sue, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, so the phase two renovations at O'Connell, we're just we've got a couple of minor punch list items. In the playground, I am hoping we can get out to bid in either late spring or early summer of 2021. And that should be a fairly quick project.
Okay. Thank you. I'm done with my questions. Are the members of the committee questions or motions?
Motion to send us to the full council with favor recommendation.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Mr. Payano,
Yes.
Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, duly noted, and the chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you. I'm looking forward to making that motion at the full council meeting next week. Next item, and thank you all for your work on that. I think this is our last item tonight. This is document 23820, which is an appropriation transfer from free cash to the special account for the police camera project for $150,000. And I know that I'm really glad to see that the police chief is back to maybe answer questions or provide some context on this. So whoever it is, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Counselor. As you know, the camera project that we've taken on in the city over the last 3 years has been tremendously successful. It's part of an overall safety and security plan that we've had that really has been part and parcel to 3 consecutive years of 20-year historic crime reduction. So very pleased with the cameras, both for not only their making people think twice about doing something in Lawrence, but also in our clearance rates. Our clearance rates regarding Part 1 crimes are all well above the national average. So we're very proud of that fact, and the cameras certainly provide a big role in giving our investigators an edge up on the bad guys, if you will. So it's been a very successful project, and we're looking to expand it a little bit more. As you know, I have had many conversations with many of you regarding what about putting cameras in certain spots, and there are many more areas that we could cover, particularly South Lawrence West and South Lawrence East. So this project here will allow us to do that, and so we're looking forward, and hopefully that we get your support on that.
Yeah, I'm going to write to Mr. Payano. He's been kind of a leader on this issue. So, Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Councilor Plant. No, so the questions that I have is just if it's possible by the next meeting, if we can have a clear understanding of how what cameras are going to be bought. I know that in the memo that was sent, it looked like there were several cameras, the static ones that we know about, the ones that can be moved around. I'm interested in knowing sort of how many of what will be bought, in part because I think, one of the things that I know that some of the residents have been talking about is that while we have, and I know this is part of an overall plan, well, the cameras were placed in areas of the entrances to the city and main streets and obviously hotspots. There are certain areas that might not be extremely hot, but there are things that go on. And I know residents have been asking when something's going to be put on in their neighborhood, or even I love the idea that there's going to be some cameras, more cameras that will be able to be moved around, and depending on a particular situation. And I think just residents knowing how much are available, I think might calm some fears out there.
Certainly, Council, I can tell you off the top of my head, and I can give it to you in writing, is that we're looking at buying 7 more what we call quick deploy cameras, to your point, that can be put up in areas that all of a sudden, for whatever reason, whether it's illegal dumping or auto theft or drug dealing, those cameras can be moved at a moment's notice. We currently have 3, and what we found very quickly is that Not only are we using them, but some of the other city department heads have requested them, and we just quite frankly don't have enough. So we're looking to buy 7 more, which would give us 10. And we feel like that would be a real good complement to try to deal with some of the issues that pop up where we're looking to move some cameras around. Maybe not forever, but for certainly a place that's kind of popped off, if you will. So that's kind of the game plan there. And the rest of them, rest of the monies would be going towards another additional 40 to 45 sites around the city. And that would depend on, you know, what our statistics show us and also what our lack of coverage is giving us right now. And so there's a thought process there, but I can certainly draw that down for you more if you need it.
And thank you, and I appreciate that. No, I definitely think that there's certain zones that are not necessarily covered, and you know, the fact that we're going to have, and not that I'm looking for there to be a camera in every corner, absolutely not, right? But I think that there are certain areas that do need more support. I think that this year it may not have been as with COVID and everything. I think that for a certain time there was not a lot of action out there, but I think you know, I'm starting to hear from residents that you know, they're noticing sort of like more you know, the drug sale going on in certain areas. So I think that this is going to be a positive tool that you guys can use to try to put a stop on crime. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Chief, I just want just 2 quick points. One is, you know, when we started this project back 2 years ago now, something like that. It's unfortunate that we're doing it. I get why we're doing it. I support why we're doing it, but there's always that line, which I'm not sure where it is on this case, is this, you know, civil liberties, and then making sure that we don't want cameras in every intersection because it gets to be too much, but we want them in some hot spots. And there's a real balance, and it's delicate as to how intrusive and how much we want government to be watching every bit of our life. It's already out there. I get it. We have doorknobs and doorbells with cameras on it, and we're, you know, and then we give those things up. So there's cameras all over the place. But I guess what I don't want us to lose that sight that this is a very powerful tool that we have, and that we should be very judicious in how we deal with it and how we place it, and where, to Mr. Payano's point, where we place it. And that should always be at the forefront of the placement for the citizens that I represent. I imagine all of us. So I just want to repeat that. I know that you're doing that, but I'm going to, as long as I can remember to say this, when these kinds of items come up, I'm going to repeat that, because I don't want us to forget that this is a pretty powerful and intrusive tool, and we need to be very careful in how we deploy and use it.
Certainly, it's a great point. We started the first project in August of 18, and we've gone on from there. I can tell you that we do very thoughtful in where we put the cameras, and to your point and others, you know, they're primarily in spots where we can find someone or catch someone, if you will, leaving a zone. So we're trying to really cover zones, not necessarily on every corner, but certainly the ins and outs of a neighborhood, if you will. So while protecting someone's, you know, rights not to have a camera in front of their house on every corner, but certainly enough information for us to do an investigation. So I think we've been thoughtful in that, and I say that also because we have never had a complaint from anyone yet regarding their thoughts on their civil liberties being violated or anything like that, or their objections to a camera somewhere, thankfully. So I think we've done a pretty good job there, but certainly to your point, we're certainly going to continue to, you know, to make sure that we do our due diligence on that and try to protect both the public with the cameras and also people's rights as well.
And my last question, because it's new technology, my understanding is that we have drones and we're using drones. When do we deploy them, and how do they use in conjunction with these cameras?
So the drones are very limited in use. We very rarely break them out. As a matter of fact, we do more training than anything. But primarily for missing persons, and or, you know, on the rare instance where we can get a drone up in time, if we had someone that fled from an incident and went into a wooded area, say one of the riverbank areas, or one of the parks, if you will. That's one of the larger parks. But I can tell you, I think we've only done that, a couple of times. It's mostly for emergency situations when we have a missing person or an individual with autism or an elderly person who's kind of walked away. We try to cover an area very quickly, especially the riverbanks where we've had some individuals, unfortunately go over the bridge and things like that. And putting them in places where police officers don't necessarily have the ability to get to very quickly. So along the riverbanks and things of that nature. So the drones themselves can function in that they can communicate back to the cameras if we needed them to. But like I said, they're not deployed very often. So we don't patrol them over neighborhoods randomly. There's no random patrols. We actually, abide by the FAA laws and having to tell them before we put these drones in the air. So, we're very thoughtful in that regard too, and strict policies on that as well.
I'm done with my questions on that. Are there any other? I know that Mr. Piano spoke. You can speak again if you want. Mr. Abdu, if there's a motion or another comment.
Make a motion to send up to the full council the favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Piano,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez noted, and the chair votes yes. Motion to send up full council with favorable recommendation. Before we move on, Mr. Ianello, there was a series of things this evening, free cash. At some point, I'd like to get a tabulation as to how much free cash remains if all these items are adopted on Tuesday. So you may or may not have that now, but there's a lot. So
I can give that to you now.
okay.
We have a free cash is certified. It's $18,799,563. And if all these free cash items were to be approved, we would have a remaining balance of $15,388,563. So the total cumulative uses tonight are $3,411,000.
Great. You expected that question, didn't you? Thank you.
Yeah.
Extra points. All right. I don't think there's anything else. I do see that Mr. Miguel is with us. Are we missing something? Is there something on the agenda? No.
Hi, good evening. I was actually here for 263, but apparently it was at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, we took that up early.
Yeah.
But we got it through, I think. So it's a full council. All right. If there's no other items before the council or the committee this evening, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion that we go through each and every one of the table matters, allotting 30 minutes for each one with a 20-minute recess between them until we're finished. Apparently I don't have a second, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, Counselor, I wanted to make sure that I allowed you the ability to make the motion to adjourn.
Let that be a lesson.
You has had a long day tonight.
Let that be a lesson, Mr. Payano. Seize the day, carpe diem. Don't let them take the horns. All right, I'll call the roll. We're going to start with you, Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, duly noted. Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
Excellent. The chair votes in the affirmative. Thanks, everyone. See you on Tuesday.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.